Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. Just wanted to pick up on some comments that Eddie Hearn, the Matchroom promoter, has made to Boxing News. So this is about him saying Deontay Wilder is in a corner where he wants him and that he'll potentially have to face one of his fighters. That is, of course, Dillian Whyte or Anthony Joshua. So he feels he's got him boxed in. I kind of see things a little bit differently to Hearn here, but more on that in a moment. Let's get to the quote first. Eddie Hearn says, "I think we've got him cornered," is a good way to put it. Eventually, Dillian will be the mandatory for Deontay Wilder when that is called. Obviously, he's just boxed his mandatory, so you're looking normally at like 9 months. So it probably won't be called till September. Will Dillian fight in the summer? Possibly. But I think we've got Wilder cornered. If he doesn't want to fight Joshua, he's going to have to fight Dillian Whyte. So that's Eddie Hearn's statement to Boxing News. On the face of it, you could say that he makes a decent argument, a solid one. But I do think he's overlooking a few things here. And it may not just be a case of option A or option B. I think there's a few other variables at play here. I mean, the first point to consider, I think Wilder has options. For example, if he beats Luis Ortiz in March, let's say that he does beat Ortiz, then there's nothing tying him to take the winner of the Anthony Joshua or Joseph Parker unification. He doesn't have to face the winner immediately. There is nothing on him that makes it so that he has to do that. So if Joshua wins in particular, I could actually see Wilder holding out for the right offer, because that makes the most sense from a business perspective. And Joshua can't become undisputed without the WBC belt. Wilder knows this, so why wouldn't you want to hold out for a little bit more bread and wait for that right offer? And in the interim, he's going to have to fight someone. So in that scenario where, and I think it's a likely scenario where there's, so for example, if Joshua wins and Wilder wins, just hypothetically here, there would likely be a gap, and it would push out a potential clash to perhaps the end of this year or even beyond. So that would leave Wilder needing opponents in the meantime. And I think if Wilder gets past Ortiz, then the next likely opponent won't be Dillian Whyte. Not immediately, at least. I think it's more likely to be Dominic Breazeale, who, as I'm going to note in my 2018 Contenders Part 2 coming out this week, Breazeale, he's enhanced his title shot credentials with wins over Izu Ogono and Eric Molina in 2017. And right now he's number 2 in the WBC rankings. So just from that standpoint, from the optics perspective, he's not a bad voluntary for Wilder. Plus Wilder and Breazeale have a bit of prior beef here. So you can definitely market a bad blood type fight, settling old scores and whatnot. And you might be thinking, well, some of you at least, wow, great, another Wilder fight, another not so great opponent. But if you actually think about this, by the time that this would be rolling around, and if everything goes through hypothetically as I've outlined, he would have been coming off a signature win against Luis Ortiz. And let's face it, there won't be many better options around for him to actually take on and get full credit. The next best thing is Alexander Povetkin, and let's face it, he'll likely be waiting for his mandatory shot in the WBO or WBA to be called, to be ordered. But given the past PED-related fight cancellation with Wilder, do you really see that happening? I'm not sure that's a goer. So Breazeale, he's also an Al Haymon fighter, so it would definitely make sense for Wilder to be matched with Breazeale at some point, with the money staying in-house, and it also ensures that should there be an upset, that the belt would stay on US soil. And I think that's important for someone like Al Haymon. He wants to be keeping that belt there because it is prestigious. Also factor in here, there's a bit of a sidekick in all this, the WBC, the sanctioning body itself. It's been very supportive of Deontay Wilder through his 3-year title reign. I mean, as it should be, it's their champion. But you've almost got the sense they've been bending over backwards to a degree. And it's been supportive in the sense more recently saying it wants a unification, it wants a big matchup, and it'll support Deontay Wilder to achieve that goal. And I would say this just as my personal opinion here, but I also believe that the WBC would prefer their belt, to stay in North America, to stay on those shores. And having a world heavyweight belt in America, I mean, I do think it's actually a good thing, and it helps keep the spotlight there as well. It is a glamour division still. It may not be as big as it once was in the United States, but having a heavyweight belt in America, it does help the scene there. I think there's no two ways getting away from that. So while Eddie Hearn may have helped maneuver his fighter Dillian Whyte into the #1 slot of the WBC rankings, it doesn't necessarily guarantee a thing. Remember the Bermanstavern mandatory. It was the first mandatory obligation that Wilder had actually done in his title reign, and that was for various reasons. Most notably, he'd had a couple of PED-related pullouts. So obviously we had Ortiz more recently. Prior to that, you had Alexander Povetkin in 2016. So Eddie Hearn, he's definitely, when he says, the 9-month window from November to when it gets called, or when he said it could likely be called, he's definitely coming from the optimistic end of town. I'm not sure he should be so confident on that front. Also factor in, Dillian Whyte, he could lose in the interim to Lucas Brown. And his WBC ranking, it goes west, it goes to someone else. But let's just keep this hypothetical situation going. Say Dillian Whyte wins. We know that Eddie Hearn wants Whyte to face Wilder. Should that happen, if it actually gets that far, and I'm not convinced it gets that far this year, from Hearn's perspective, it's a win-win whatever happens. If Whyte wins, it sets up a lucrative grudge match with Anthony Joshua. That rematch between Whyte and Joshua would be epic. It'd be huge. But if Wilder wins, then it makes a unification with Anthony Joshua that much bigger. But here's the rub with that. We know that Deontay Wilder doesn't want that fight. He stated publicly, and very publicly, he's not interested in fighting Dillian Whyte, because as he's put it, he won't get any credit from beating him. So for that reason, and some of the above which I've already talked about, I actually think it's more likely a unification between Wilder and Joshua happens in 2018, rather than a Wilder-Dillian Whyte fight. I'm just not sure that's going to happen. I mean, there's lots of ifs, buts, and maybes, but I just wanted to kick around a few of the ways this thing could shake down. And I guess the question is Wilder really in a corner, as Hearn has put it? Or is it more that he's in a round room? Let me know. Drop a comment loud and often. Hit like, hit subscribe, follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. I'm out.